There is a moment, near the end of Blade Runner 2049, where a manufactured man sits down on a set of stone steps and quietly decides to die. He has just saved the life of a stranger. He has just reunited a father with a daughter the father has never met. Nobody is watching. Nobody will know. And as the snow begins to fall on his face, the film holds on him for a long time, and the music does not resolve, and you realize, slowly, that you have been watching one of the most honest meditations on what a life is worth that a science fiction movie has ever tried to make. The film is 3 hours long. It is quiet. It is slow. It is full of rain and neon and gray sky and long silences. And underneath all of it, it is asking one question, patiently, from every angle it can find. What makes a person real? That is the thread we are going to follow tonight, one careful pull at a time, until the whole film comes apart in our hands and shows us what it has been holding. Section 1. To be born is to have a soul, I guess. The central question the film never stops asking. There is a moment early in Blade Runner 2049, so quiet you could miss it, where the entire movie tells you what it is about. It happens in an office. The rain is coming down outside, the way it always seems to in this world. Kay has just come back from a job. He killed a man that morning, a farmer named Sapper Morton, and he found something buried under a tree on that farm. A box. And inside the box, bones. A woman. A replicant. And the bones tell a story that should not be possible. She died giving birth. Kay sits across from his boss, Lieutenant Joshi. She tells him what needs to happen. The child has to be found. The child has to be erased. Every trace of this miracle has to vanish before anyone else knows it happened. Because if the world finds out that a replicant gave birth, the careful line that keeps humans on one side and replicants on the other falls apart. And when that line falls apart, she believes, war follows. Kay listens. He nods. He says he has never retired something that was born before. And then he says the line that the rest of the movie will spend almost 3 hours turning over in its hands, examining from every angle, refusing to let go. To be born is to have a soul, I guess. He says it almost like a thought he is hearing for the first time, like he is surprised it came out of his mouth. There is a pause. You can feel it in the room. And then Joshi answers him with a line just as quiet, just as heavy. You have been getting along fine without one. That is it. That is the whole movie. Everything after this scene is the film slowly, patiently, gently testing whether Kay is right or whether Joshi is right. Whether being born matters. Whether a soul is something you are given at birth or something you build over time through the choices you make. The story looks like a detective story on the surface. Kay is looking for a missing child. He is following clues. He is chasing a mystery across a broken landscape. But under that surface, he is really looking for something else. He is looking for the answer to the question he asked in that office. And the person he is really asking the question about is himself. This is what makes Blade Runner 2049 a different kind of science fiction movie. Most stories about robots and artificial beings ask one big question. Can a machine be alive? Can a machine think? Can a machine feel? Blade Runner 2049 asks something harder. It asks, what makes a person real in the first place? What is the thing inside us? That thing we cannot point to or measure or cut open and show to someone that makes our lives matter. Is it in our blood? Is it in our brains? Is it something we are born with? Or is it something we become through living? The word they use for that thing in the world of the film is soul. And the film does not pretend to have a clean answer about what a soul is. That is part of why the movie stays with you. It does not lecture. It does not preach. It sets the question down in front of you, very softly, in that first office scene. And then it spends the rest of its runtime walking around the question, looking at it from every side. Think about what Kay is in that scene. He is a new kind of replicant, newer than the ones from the first movie. He has been built to obey. He has been built not to rebel. He has a job, a place to live, a life of a kind. He kills his own kind for a living, and he never asks why. And nobody around him thinks this is strange because he is not supposed to think it is strange. He is a tool, a very advanced tool. A tool that talks and walks and bleeds when you hurt it, but a tool. And yet something in him hesitates. When Joshi tells him to go find the child and erase every trace of it, he does not say yes right away. He pauses. He thinks. And out of that pause comes the line. To be born is to have a soul. He is not reading it off a page. He is not quoting someone. The thought arrives in him and he speaks it. And for a second, you can see him being surprised by his own words. A tool does not do that. A machine that was built to obey does not stop and wonder out loud whether the thing it is being asked to do might be wrong. So already, in the first real scene of the movie, the film has shown you a crack. A crack in the wall between what Kay is supposed to be and what he might actually be. The crack is small. It is just a line of dialogue. But everything that happens after it widens the crack. By the end of the movie, the wall is gone, and you are left staring at what was behind it all along. The question of the soul is old. Older than movies, older than books, older than anyone can trace. People have been arguing about what makes a human for as long as there have been humans. A long time ago, in the 1700s, a man named John Locke tried to answer it by saying that a person is whoever can stop and think about themselves. Whoever can look inside and go, yes, that is me. I am here. I am the one doing the looking. By that definition, Kay is a person. He looks inside himself all the time. He questions. He wonders. He feels things he is not supposed to feel. Earlier than Locke, another thinker named Descartes had a famous line, "I think, therefore I am." The idea being that if you can doubt yourself, if you can sit and worry about whether you are real, then that act of doubting proves you are real. Something has to be doing the doubting. And again, by that definition, Kay is real. He doubts himself constantly. He wonders if his memories are his. He wonders if his love is love. He wonders if he matters. The doubting is the proof. But here is where it gets complicated. Here is why Joshi can look at Kay and mean what she says when she tells him he has been getting along fine without a soul. Because in the world of the film, none of those old definitions count for replicants. The rules are different. A replicant can think. A replicant can doubt. A replicant can look inside and see itself looking, and the world still calls that replicant a machine. The world has decided in advance that no matter what a replicant does, no matter how it feels, no matter what it chooses, it is not real. The decision was made before the replicant was even built. The decision was made by the people who build them. That is the cruelty of the world Kay lives in. The soul, in this place, is not something you can earn. It is something you are either assigned or denied at the moment of your making. And Kay, like every replicant, was denied. The denial is so deep that Kay himself believes it. When he says to be born is to have a soul, he is not making a case for himself. He is saying it about the missing child, the one who was actually born, the one who came out of a mother. He is drawing the line in the same place everyone else draws it. Born on one side, made on the other. Souls on one side, tools on the other. And he is putting himself on the wrong side of that line without a fight. But something has already started to move in him. You can feel it. The pause before the line, the careful way he says it, the word he chooses at the end. I guess. Not a statement, a guess. He is not sure. He is starting to wonder. The whole rest of the film is built out of that wondering. Every scene that comes after this one is another small test of the line. Is Kay a tool, or is he something more? Is his love for joy real, or is it just programming? Do his memories belong to him, or to someone else? When he chooses to help Deckard at the end, at the cost of his own life, is that a program running? Or is that a choice? And every time the film asks one of these smaller questions, it is really asking the big question from The Office. What makes a life real? What gives a life weight? Where does the soul come from? The movie takes the ancient question, the one Locke and Descartes and 100 other thinkers have argued about for hundreds of years, and drops it into a world where the question suddenly has stakes again. Because in our real world, the question is a puzzle for philosophy class. Do we have souls? Who knows? We walk around assuming we do, mostly, and we do not think about it much. But in the world of the film, the question is not academic. The question decides whether someone gets to live, whether someone gets rights, whether someone gets counted. The line between soul and no soul is the line between person and product, and people die on the wrong side of that line every day. This is why the film keeps coming back to the word, the way a tongue keeps returning to a sore tooth. Soul. 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 Joshi uses it. Kay uses it. Wallace uses it. The rebel replicants use it. Everyone in the movie seems to agree that a soul matters. Nobody agrees on what one is. Nobody agrees on who has one. And the movie, slowly, across its whole runtime, makes a case that the people who are most certain they have souls, the powerful ones, the rich ones, the humans who built the replicants, and the humans who profit from their labor, might have less of one than the manufactured being sitting across from them in an office, hesitating before he answers. There is something quietly radical in that. The film is not saying replicants are just as good as humans. It is saying something stranger. It is saying that the whole question of who counts and who does not is a question the powerful invented to make the answer come out the way they wanted it to. Joshi believes Kay has no soul because the world she lives in is built on the belief that Kay has no soul. If she started to believe otherwise, the world would have to change. The shape of everything would shift. So she does not let herself believe otherwise. And she tells Kay he has been getting along fine without one. And in her voice there is something almost tender, something almost like an apology. Because a part of her knows she is saying something that is not true. You can hear it in her line readings throughout the film if you go back and watch. Joshi is not cruel. Joshi is tired. Joshi is a person who has made peace with an order she did not design and cannot challenge. She drinks. She smokes. She sends Kay out to kill his own kind. And she does it because she believes, or tells herself she believes, that keeping the line clean is the only thing keeping the world from falling apart. And when Kay says the line in her office, she does not mock him. She does not laugh. She just answers him, quietly, with the words everyone in this world has been trained to say to a replicant who gets too close to wondering. You have been getting along fine without one. Which means, keep going. Do your job. Do not think about this. If you start thinking about this, the whole thing breaks. And Kay says, okay. And he walks out of the office. And he goes to find the child. And somewhere in the next 3 hours, without ever quite meaning to, without ever quite choosing to, he starts thinking about it anyway. The line Joshi told him not to cross, he crosses. The question she told him not to ask, he asks. The soul she told him he did not have, he begins, in his own strange and quiet way, to grow. That is the arc. That is the shape of the whole movie. A being built to obey, gently, slowly, almost by accident, becoming something the people who built him did not intend and cannot control. Not because he rebels in any loud way, not because he picks up a weapon and screams at the sky, because he asks a question in a quiet office on a rainy morning and then refuses to stop asking it. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Which brings us to the thing the film does next. Having laid the question down in front of you, the question of the soul and where it comes from and what it means to be born, the film does something surprising. It takes its main character, the one you are supposed to root for, the one who looks for all the world like the chosen hero of the story, and it sets him up to be exactly that. The prophesied one, the miracle child, the replicant born of a mother. It gives him the shape of destiny, and then, very carefully, very deliberately, it takes that destiny away. Section 2. The architecture of Kay. Why the protagonist had to be an ordinary replicant. The shape of a hero story is something most people know by heart without ever being taught it. You do not need to have studied anything to feel it in your bones. A person starts out small, ordinary, nothing special about them. Then something happens. A message arrives, a stranger appears, a door opens, and the ordinary person learns that they are not ordinary at all. They were chosen. They were born for something. There is a destiny waiting for them, a secret identity, a birthright, a mission only they can carry out. The ordinary person becomes extraordinary, and the story is the journey of them becoming what they always secretly were. You have seen this story 1,000 times. A farm boy finds out he is a wizard. A girl learns she is the heir to a throne. A quiet man discovers he is the last of some ancient line. The story is built into almost every movie, every book, every myth going back as far as you can trace. It is a comforting shape because it tells you something you want to hear. It tells you that even if your life feels small right now, there is a chance, a real chance, that underneath the smallness there is something waiting to be discovered. That you were made for something. That you matter because of what you are, not because of what you do. Blade Runner 2049 knows this shape perfectly. It knows that you know it. And it spends the first 2 hours of its runtime setting you up to believe that Kay is walking that familiar path. That he is the chosen one. That the ordinary replicant is about to discover he is something far greater than ordinary. And then, with almost cruel patience, the film takes that belief and breaks it. This is the choice that makes Blade Runner 2049 different from almost every other science fiction story about artificial beings. The choice to have the hero not be the hero. The choice to give you a character who looks exactly like a chosen one, who acts like a chosen one, who is believed to be a chosen one by the people around him, and then to reveal that he is not. He is just a replicant, one of many. A memory he thought was his was never his. A destiny he thought belonged to him belongs to someone else. The prophecy is real, but he is not in it. That choice had to be made by specific people at specific desks on specific days. The movie did not write itself. The screenplay was written by a man named Hampton Fancher, who had worked on the first Blade Runner movie back in the 80s, and a younger writer named Michael Green. Between the two of them, and with the director Denis Villeneuve pushing them, a decision was made early on that the movie would start in the most ordinary place possible and build the hero up, only to tear him down. The unremarkable origin, the dull apartment, the gray job, and then the slow rise into what looks like destiny, and then the fall. To understand why this choice matters so much, you have to understand what Kay looks like at the start of the film. He is a Nexus 9 replicant. That is the newest model, made by the Wallace Corporation, the company that took over replicant manufacturing after the old Tyrell Corporation went bankrupt. The Nexus 9 models are designed to be completely obedient. They are engineered on a deep level to not rebel, to not question their orders, to simply follow. Every few shifts, Kay has to take something called a baseline test, a kind of emotional checkup, where a voice on a speaker reads him phrases and he has to repeat them back, with no feeling in his voice at all. If his voice cracks, if his words slow down, if any emotion leaks into the recitation, he fails the test. And failing the test means he is considered rogue. And being considered rogue means he gets retired, killed. So Kay spends his whole working life being measured for signs of becoming a person. And every time he passes the test, it means he has successfully not become one for another few days. His apartment is small and ugly. Prefabricated walls, a single tiny shower, a window that looks out over endless gray city. The director was very specific with the set designers about this. He wanted the space to feel plastic, cold, machine-like, because he wanted the audience to feel from the first frame that this was not a place a person lived. This was a place a unit was stored between shifts. His neighbors hate him. They call him Skinner. They call him Skin Job. These are insults used against replicants, the same way real slurs are used against real people in real life. And Kay hears them and keeps walking. He does not answer back. He has been built not to answer back. His only companion is a hologram named Joy, who is not technically a person either. She is a product. He bought her. She lights up when he comes home and flickers out when he leaves. And the movie will eventually ask you to decide whether what she feels for him is real. But at this point in the story, she is just another piece of his life that underlines how alone he actually is. This is the ordinary place. This is where the film starts its hero. A manufactured being in a manufactured room with a manufactured companion, doing manufactured work, being tested to make sure he is still not a person. You cannot build a starting point more stripped down than that. And then the story begins to move. Kay finds the buried bones. The bones turn out to belong to a replicant who died giving birth, which should be impossible. He is sent to erase the child. He goes to the Wallace Corporation and finds out the dead woman was Rachel, the replicant from the first Blade Runner movie, the one who was in love with the original hero Deckard. He starts following the trail. And that is when things begin to shift. He finds a tree on Sapper Morton's farm with a date carved into the bark. October 6th, 2021. He looks at the date and something moves in him. He has a memory. A childhood memory. The only childhood memory he has. In the memory, he is a small boy in an orphanage, chased by other boys, hiding a little wooden horse in the hollow of a furnace. And carved into the base of the wooden horse in his memory is the same date, October 6th, 2021. The coincidence is too big to ignore. Joy sees it first. She says what the audience is already thinking. Maybe the memory is not an implant. Maybe the memory is real. Maybe Kay is the child. Maybe he was born, not made. Maybe the bones belong to his mother. And from that moment on, the movie begins to feel like the kind of story you have seen before. The hero learns he is chosen. The hero finds evidence of a secret past. The hero chases the truth across a broken country, uncovering piece by piece the destiny he was always heading toward. The film leans into this feeling on purpose. The music swells, the cinematography lifts. Kay starts to stand a little straighter. He starts to believe. Joy believes for him. She gives him a new name, Joe. Because Joe is the name of a person, and Kay is the name of a product. And if he is the miracle child, he deserves to be called something a person would be called. If you are watching the film for the first time, you are carried along by this. You feel what Kay feels. You feel the shape of destiny closing around him. You begin to expect the moment where he will stand before the rebels, or before Wallace, or before Deckard, and be revealed as the one, the child, the proof, the miracle. And then the film takes that from you. Kay finds Deckard in an abandoned casino in the ruins of Las Vegas. They fight. They talk. Deckard tells him that he and Rachel had a child together. He confirms the miracle is real. And then everything falls apart. Love, the enforcer who works for Wallace, arrives. She kills Joy by crushing her portable device under her boot. She takes Deckard away. She leaves Kay for dead. When Kay wakes up, he is with the rebel replicants. They are led by a one-eyed replicant named Freysa, who was there the night Rachel gave birth, who held the child after the mother died. Freysa tells Kay the truth. The miracle child was a girl, not a boy. There was a boy in the records too, but only to confuse anyone who came looking. The boy was a cover, a false trail. Kay is not the child. He never was. He was just a replicant who happened to be given a memory that once belonged to a real person. His memory is real. His life is not. This is the moment the film has been building toward for 2 hours. The moment of the reveal. In most stories, this is where the hero learns they are chosen. In this story, the hero learns he is not. He is just a machine who was given somebody else's memory for reasons that had nothing to do with him. He was never special. He was never the one. His whole journey was a mistake, a wrong turn, a detour into a story that was not his. The look on his face when Freysa tells him this is one of the quietest moments in the whole film. He does not shout. He does not break anything. He does not argue. He sits with the news. You can see him sitting with it. And you, in the audience, sit with it too, because what you thought you were watching turns out to be something else entirely. Now here is where the movie does the thing that makes it great. Because a lesser version of this story would end with Kay being broken by the news. A lesser version would turn him into a tragic figure, a machine who dreamed of being more and learned he was not. A lesser version would use the reveal to make a point about how sad it is to be a tool. Blade Runner 2049 does the opposite. It uses the reveal to set up the most important choice in the film. Freysa tells Kay that the most human thing he can do, now that he knows he is not the one, is to die for the right cause. To kill Deckard before Wallace can find him and torture information out of him about where the real child is hiding. The rebels need Kay to do this. Their whole movement depends on the child staying hidden, and Deckard is the link that could lead Wallace to her. So Deckard has to die. That is the mission Freysa gives him. Sacrifice yourself for the cause. Die a meaningful death. Let your life mean something by letting it end in service of something bigger. Kay listens. Kay thinks. And then Kay makes a different choice. He does not kill Deckard. He rescues him. He tracks Love down, fights her in the waves, near the crashing wall of the seawall. And he drowns her. And he pulls Deckard out of the water. And he brings him to the one place Deckard needs to go. He brings him to the memory maker, Dr. Anna Stelline, working in her sealed glass room, designing childhood memories for replicants she will never meet. And Dr. Anna Stelline, Kay now understands, is the real child. Deckard's daughter. Rachel's daughter. The miracle. Kay does not go in with Deckard. He sits down on the steps outside. He has been stabbed. He is bleeding out. Snow begins to fall, and he watches through the glass as a father meets his daughter for the first time. And then he lies back on the steps, and the snow keeps falling, and his eyes go still. Think about what he did. He was told he was special and found out he was not. He was offered a meaningful death in service of a cause that would have remembered his name. And he turned away from both of those paths and chose a third. He chose to do something good for two people he barely knew, quietly, alone, with nobody watching, with no reward at the end. He was not the chosen one. Nobody will write songs about him. The rebels will not know what he did. Deckard will not know the full story of what Kay gave up. Anna Stelline will never meet the man who bled to death on her steps. And yet the film shows you, clearly, unmistakably, that this is the moment Kay becomes a person. Not when he thought he was the miracle child. Not when he had a destiny. When he chose, freely, without being told to do something kind for someone else at the cost of his own life. This is the argument the film is making through its shape. The hero who turns out to be chosen is comforting because it tells you that your worth comes from what you are, what you were born as, what secret destiny you were handed. Blade Runner 2049 says no. Your worth comes from what you choose. A chosen one is not a hero. A person who was never chosen, who had no destiny, who was nothing special, and who still chose to do the right thing, that is a hero. Because they had every reason not to. Because nobody was going to reward them for it. Because the choice was theirs and only theirs, and they made it anyway. The name Kay carries is also doing work in this direction, if you know where to look. Joseph Kay is the name of the main character in a very old book called The Trial, written by a man named Franz Kafka 100 years ago. In that book, a man named Joseph Kay wakes up one morning to find himself accused of a crime no one will name, caught in a system no one will explain, pursued by rules no one will tell him. He spends the whole book trying to find meaning in his situation and failing. The film takes his name and gives it to a replicant in a world that operates the same way, and then, at the end, has its K do what Kafka's K never managed. Find meaning on his own terms. Make a choice that was his alone. Refuse the parts that were written for him, and write the last part himself.
Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. And yet a choice like that, a choice made in silence, on snowy steps, watched by no one, raises a strange and uncomfortable question. If nobody is there to see it, if nobody is there to remember it, if the world never learns it happened, did it count? Did it matter? What is a life worth when the only person who ever knew the full story of it is the one bleeding out in the snow? The answer the film gives has to do with memory. And to get to that answer, the story has to go back further. All the way back to a little wooden horse in the hollow of a furnace and the strange, stubborn, heartbreaking truth about who that memory actually belonged to. Section 3. Memory as the foundation of self, the wooden horse, and the date on the tree. There is a single memory that K carries around inside him, and it is the only one he has of being small. In it, he is a boy in a dark place, full of other boys, and the other boys are chasing him. He has something they want, a wooden horse, a small carved thing, painted over, worn smooth from being held. The horse is his. He loves it, in the way a child loves the thing that is theirs when they have almost nothing else. And because the other boys are bigger and meaner, and because they will take it from him if they find it, he runs. He runs through the dark place, which he knows is an orphanage, until he comes to an old furnace, broken and cold and half forgotten. He pushes the wooden horse into the hollow of it. He hides it deep. And then the other boys catch him. They beat him up. They cannot find the horse. The horse stays safe. That is the memory. That is all of it. It is not long. You could describe it in one breath. And yet this one small memory is the thing the whole story hangs on. Without this memory, K is just another replicant doing a job. With it, he becomes a man searching for who he is. The memory is the crack in the wall. The memory is the loose thread. When K starts pulling on it, the rest of him starts coming apart. You need to understand how memories work in the world of this film, because they do not work the way you might think. Replicants, when they come off the line at the Wallace Corporation, are adults. They are grown. But a grown mind needs a past to work properly. A mind without any history feels empty, unstable, prone to breaking down. So the people who make replicants give them one. They implant childhood memories into the new adult brain, and the replicant wakes up believing they once played on a swing set, or fought with a sister, or fed a dog, or lost a toy horse to a gang of orphan bullies. None of these things ever happened to them. The memories are manufactured, just like they are. But the memories feel like theirs. They feel like the foundation of a life. The replicant walks through the world believing they have a past, and that belief is what allows them to act like they have a present. Most replicants never learn that their memories are fake. They live out their short lives thinking the things they remember are things they did. A few of them, though, figure it out, or are told. And when a replicant learns that their past belongs to no one, that every cherished moment in their head was written by a stranger and pumped into their brain in a lab, something in them falls apart. K describes this feeling to his boss, Lieutenant Joshi, when she asks him to tell her a childhood memory. He says it feels strange to tell a childhood story when he was never a child. The words are simple. The weight of them is not. This is where the film steps into an idea that is actually true about real human minds. In real life, memory is not a recording. Your brain does not save a copy of a moment and play it back later. Every time you remember something, your mind rebuilds the memory from scratch, using bits and pieces stored in different places. Each time you pull the memory up, it changes a little. The thing you remember about your 6th birthday is not your 6th birthday. It is the most recent time you remembered your 6th birthday, with small edits made along the way. Your memories are like a story you keep retelling, and each retelling shifts the story by a hair, until eventually, the thing in your head has only a loose relationship to the thing that actually happened. Blade Runner 2049 knows this. The whole film is built on this idea. If memories are not perfect recordings, then maybe the line between a real memory and an implanted one is not as sharp as people think. The replicant who remembers hiding a wooden horse and the human who remembers their own childhood are both doing the same thing, holding up a story in their head, calling it their past, believing it shaped them. What makes one of those stories real and the other one fake? What makes one of them count and the other one not count? The film does not give a clean answer. It asks the question by putting K on one side of the line and watching what happens to him when the line moves. The memory of the wooden horse starts to do something to K when he finds the tree on Sapper Morton's farm. The tree is dead, old, a gnarled thing standing alone in a gray field. And carved into the bark of the tree, low down where you would not see it unless you were looking, is a date. 6th of October, 2021. Just numbers, nothing else. But the numbers catch at something inside K, because he has seen them before. That evening, when he is back home, Joy brings him the wooden horse. She has been thinking about the memory. She has gone and looked, and on the base of the horse, underneath where a child's thumb would rest, the same numbers are carved. 6.1, 0.21. The date on the tree and the date on the horse match. Joy is the one who says it first. Maybe your memory is not an implant. Maybe you were born. Maybe the reason the date feels important is that the date is yours. Maybe the boy in the memory is not somebody else. Maybe the boy is you. Kay pushes back at first. He calls it a dangerous coincidence. He knows what the truth could cost him. If he is a replicant who was born instead of made, every person in power will want him dead or taken apart. He is safer not knowing. He is safer believing the memory is just a standard factory-issue childhood, pumped into his head like a shot of something to make him feel human. But the thought has already landed. You cannot unhear an idea like that once somebody has said it out loud. He starts to investigate. Everything about the investigation is pointed at one question. Is the memory his? Not, is the memory accurate? Not, did the events happen? Is this memory mine? Did I live this? Is this part of me because I made it part of me? Or is this part of me because somebody else installed it there? The answer feels like it should tell him something enormous. If the memory is his, he is a miracle. He was born. He has a soul in the way Joshi meant it when she said those words in her office. If the memory is not his, he is a machine like any other, stamped out of a factory, carrying somebody else's leftovers around in his head and mistaking them for a life. His search leads him, eventually, to a woman named Dr. Anna Stelline. She lives in a sealed glass room in a building outside the city. She cannot leave. The world outside would kill her. because her body cannot fight off the ordinary sicknesses the rest of us barely notice. She has spent her whole life in that one room, making her living as a memory designer for the Wallace Corporation. She builds childhood memories for replicants. She is good at it. She is the best at it. The company hires her to design the inner lives of every new replicant that comes off the line, and replicants all over the world walk around remembering childhoods that she dreamed up at her glass workstation. Kay brings her his memory, carefully, not telling her it is his. He describes the orphanage, the boys, the furnace, the wooden horse. He asks her the question, is this real? Did this happen, or was it made? Anna Stelline closes her eyes. She goes somewhere inside herself. And when she opens her eyes again, there are tears in them. She tells him the memory is real. Somebody really lived this. A real child, in a real place, hid a real horse in a real furnace. This was not designed. This was not built. This was a memory someone had, and someone else harvested it, and someone pumped it into a replicant's head. Kay walks out of her lab believing something he has never believed before. The memory is his. He is the miracle child. He was born, not made. He has a soul, by the definition Joshi used. His whole life has been a lie. And the truth underneath the lie is that he is, and always was, a person. And then, later, he learns that the truth is not the truth. The memory is real. It just does not belong to him. It belongs to Anna Stelline. The little boy in the dark place with the wooden horse was not Kay. It was her. She was the child. She was the one who was born to a replicant mother. She was the one who was hidden in the orphanage to keep her safe. And she was the one who hid the horse in the furnace. She grew up. Her parents, or the people who protected her, eventually got her into the sealed glass room where her weak body could be protected. And when she became a memory designer for Wallace, she did something she was not supposed to do. She took one of her own real memories, a specific real memory, from a specific real day of her real childhood, and she put it into the replicants she was designing for the company. She broke the rules. She gave strangers a piece of her life. Kay got that piece. That is the accident. That is the coincidence that started the whole film moving. The memory he walked around with all those years, the only childhood thing in his head, was Anna Stelline's gift to a stranger. And the stranger turned out to be him. This is the moment a lot of people read as the film breaking Kay. And it does break him, for a while. You see him collapse, you see him scream, you see him pound his fists into his own apartment. The one real thing he thought he had is now not his. The identity he built in the last stretch of the film falls apart. He was not born. He is not the miracle. He is just another manufactured thing, carrying somebody else's gift around in his head and mistaking it for a life. But here is where the film does something quietly beautiful, and you have to watch Kay carefully to catch it. Because after he falls apart, he pulls himself back together. And when he pulls himself back together, he is different. Not smaller, bigger. Something has shifted in him. The memory is still in his head. He still remembers hiding the horse. He still remembers the boys and the furnace and the feeling of holding the small wooden thing in his hand. The memory did not disappear when he found out whose it was. The memory is still doing whatever it was doing inside him all those years. It is still making him who he is. And that is the argument the film is making, very quietly, without ever saying it out loud. A memory does not have to be yours to shape you. A story does not have to have happened to you to become part of who you are. Kay's compassion, his quiet patience, his slow turning away from obedience, his willingness at the end to lay down his life for strangers. These things grew in him. They grew in him because he carried a memory around that made him feel protective of small, vulnerable things. And that feeling became his feeling, whether the original events belonged to him or not. The memory became his by being held by him, by being used by him, by being the frame he saw his own life through. That is a different idea of what memory is, an idea the film is arguing for, carefully, across its whole runtime. Memory is not a record of where you have been. Memory is the raw material you use to become who you are. And the source of the material matters less than what you build with it. Anna Stelline's childhood pain, pushed into a stranger's head by accident, became Kay's gentleness. Her horse, her furnace, her fear, her bravery, all of it got repurposed inside him into a capacity for protection that she never got to see. When Kay chooses to save Deckard at the end, chooses to reunite a father with a daughter he has never met, he is acting, without knowing it, out of a memory that came from that very daughter. The loop closes in a way Kay never gets to see. The memory Anna gave him, accidentally, shaped the man who saved her father's life and brought her father to her door. The film gives you one last touch to seal this idea. When Joshi first hears Kay describe the orphanage and the horse, she says something. Little Kay, sticking up for what's his. She does not know the memory is implanted. She thinks it is his own story. But what she says is true either way. The memory shaped him. The memory made him someone who would stick up for what was his. And by the end of the film, what turns out to be his is not a wooden horse. It is a choice. The choice to stick up for a man and a woman who have no idea he exists. Because he finally understands that sticking up for someone you love is the most real thing a person can do, whether the love grew from a real past or a borrowed one. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The memory question sits under everything else the movie is doing. Once it has been asked, the same kind of question starts to show up in other places. Because if a memory can be real without belonging to you, maybe other things can be real the same way. A promise, a feeling, a life lived with someone who only exists as flickering light from a little machine in your ceiling. There is a love story at the center of this film, and it is the strangest love story science fiction has ever tried to tell. And it runs on exactly the same question the wooden horse is asking. What does it mean for something to be real? And is the answer maybe that realness is less a fact about the world and more a choice about what we let into the places inside us where only real things are supposed to go? Section 4. Joy and the question of whether performed love is still love. Somewhere in the middle of Kay's ugly little apartment, on a ceiling that has probably been there for decades, there is a small device. It does not look like much. A flat disc of metal and circuits, wired into the ceiling like a smoke alarm or a light fixture. It hums softly when it is on. And when Kay comes home at night, after a day of killing his own kind and being insulted by his neighbors and being tested for signs of emerging feelings, he touches a button somewhere near the door, and the device comes to life, and a woman appears in his kitchen. Her name is Joy. She is not real in any of the ways people usually mean the word real. She is made of light. You can pass your hand through her. She cannot cook. She cannot touch anything. She cannot step outside the range of the device unless Kay buys her a little portable one, which he does, and when he does, she cries because she has been stuck in that apartment alone for as long as she has existed. She is a product. She was sold to him by the Wallace Corporation, the same company that built the replicants. Her advertising slogan is printed on the side of the box, and you see it later on giant billboards in the city. Everything you want to hear, everything you want to see. That is the slogan. That is the promise. Pay your money, and a woman will appear in your home who will never disagree with you, never get tired of you, never grow older, never leave, and never want anything you are not prepared to give her. She is designed from the ground up to be the perfect companion for a lonely man. And there are millions of her scattered across the city, each one customized to whatever its owner wants. Tall, short, brunette, blonde, shy, bold. Whatever you order, she comes configured that way. She is not a person. She is a subscription. And yet something happens between Kay and his joy. Something the slogan does not quite account for. Across the length of the film, the two of them build what looks, feels, and sounds like a love story. A strange one. A quiet one. But a love story all the same. And the film holds that love story up to the light and asks you to look very carefully at it. Because the whole movie is betting that you cannot tell for certain whether what you are seeing is love or whether what you are seeing is the most advanced product in the history of sales. The first time you see them together, they are in the kitchen. He has come home. She lights up. She asks how his day was in that soft, careful voice. He tells her he killed someone. She does not flinch. She pours him a drink he cannot actually drink because she cannot actually pour anything. He pours it himself, and she stands beside him like she poured it, and he drinks it and she watches. Then she lays out dinner. The dinner is a bowl of gray protein sludge, the kind of food that passes for eating in a world where the real kind of food is all gone. She cannot cook it, but she projects over the bowl a hologram of a perfect steak dinner, a glass of red wine, a candle. She sits across from him, her image laid carefully over the sludge, and he eats the sludge while seeing the steak. That scene, more than almost anything else in the movie, tells you what kind of life Kay is living. The real food is gone. The real touch is gone. The real company is gone. What he has instead is a beautiful image pressed down on top of an ugly truth, and it is enough, almost, to let him keep going. He smiles at her across the table. She smiles back. Neither of them touches anything. He eats his sludge and sees his steak and feels, for a few minutes, like a man having dinner with a woman who loves him. The question the film then spends the rest of its runtime circling is whether she does. Here are the things that make you think she does. She worries about him. She remembers things he cares about. She gets excited when he gets excited. She reads him books out loud at night, and when he is quiet, she asks what he is thinking, and when he will not answer, she does not push. She sees the memory of the wooden horse as something important long before he does, and she is the first one to suggest that maybe he was born, that maybe he is special. She gives him a new name, Joe. She says she wants him to have a name that belongs to a person, not a number that belongs to a product. She asks him to delete her from the home system, so that she only exists on the little portable device. Because that way, she can go with him when he leaves to follow the truth. And she will not be left behind in an apartment where Wallace's people could find her and read her memories. The deletion means if the portable device breaks, she is gone forever. No backup, no restore. She is asking to be made mortal so that she can be with him in his mortal life. He is reluctant. She insists. She wants to go with him. She wants to stop being safe. When the moment comes, and Wallace's enforcer, Love, arrives, and the device is crushed under a boot, Joy has just enough time to say 3 words. I love you. She says them while being erased. She says them while knowing nothing that comes after this will save her. She says them at the moment when saying them cannot help her, cannot benefit her, cannot earn her anything. She says them, and then she stops existing. Everything in that sequence points at Love, the whole structure of it. A being who wanted to stay safe, who chose to come along instead, who wanted to be erased from her home system so she could risk herself for him, who used her last words to tell him something she had told him many times before, but which, at that moment, she did not have to say. A sales program does not need to say anything as its product is destroyed. A lie does not need to say anything at that moment either. A truth, maybe, does. Now here are the things that make you doubt. The slogan: everything you want to hear, everything you want to see. That is not a small detail. That is the thing her whole species is advertised as. Every kindness she shows him, every moment of understanding, every time she reads him like a book and knows what he needs before he knows himself, could be read one way as love, and another way as the most perfect customer service ever built. She is, by design, the woman who understands him without ever needing to be told. She is, by design, the woman who never needs anything from him. She is, by design, the partner who is always supportive, always there, always eager to please. If those are the design specs, then every nice thing she does is simply the product doing what it was made to do. It feels like love. It acts like love. It looks like love. That is what it is for. And there is one scene near the end that the film plants in there specifically to make you wonder. After Joy has been killed, after Kay has been left for dead and rescued by the rebels and told he is not the chosen one, he walks across a bridge. He is bleeding. He is broken. He has lost everything he thought was his. And he walks past a giant advertisement for the Joy product. 100 feet tall, blue-haired, painted, projected across the face of a building. The ad sees him because these ads are interactive, and the ad turns toward him. The enormous blue-haired Joy leans down. She looks at him the way his own Joy used to look at him. She smiles the smile his own Joy used to smile. And she says, "You look like a good Joe." Joe. The exact name his Joy had given him. The name that had felt, all that time, like a private thing between the two of them. A special thing. A gift. And the billboard Joy is saying it too, to a stranger on a bridge. Because that is just the kind of line the product says to men who walk past it. The film does not tell you what to think in that scene. It just lets the billboard say the line, and it lets you see Kay's face, and it moves on. You can read that moment as the film telling you that everything was a lie. All of the little things that felt special were standard features, available to any man with enough money and enough loneliness. Or you can read that moment as the film telling you something stranger and more interesting. that the billboard joy and his joy started out the same, from the same template, with the same factory settings. But his joy, over the course of living with him, having experiences with him, choosing things with him, became something else, became somebody. The billboard joy is what she could have been. His joy is who she actually was. The movie does not pick between these readings. That is the point. The film is built to hold both of them at once. Some people walk out of the theater certain that Joy loved him, really loved him, in whatever way a being of light can love. Some people walk out certain that Kay was a fool, that he mistook a program for a soul, and that the saddest thing in the movie is how completely he fell for a piece of sales software. Both readings are supported by what you see on screen. Neither reading is fully correct. The film wants you to sit in the space between them and ask yourself what the space means. Because the space, it turns out, is where the actual philosophical question lives. Say Joy was only running a program. Say every loving thing she did was, at the root, an algorithm trained on what lonely men want to see. That is the worst-case scenario for her. Does that make Kay's love for her fake? Does that make what he felt any less real? He sat across from her at a table and ate gray sludge while seeing a steak, and he was happy. The happiness was not faked. The happiness was in him. If the source of his happiness was a program, and the program was very good at its job, and the happiness he got from it was the same happiness he would have gotten from a real woman doing the same things, then what, exactly, is missing? What is the thing that love is supposed to have that this love does not? The film is not answering. The film is asking. There is a thinker some people bring up when they try to talk about joy, a French writer named Jean Baudrillard. He had an idea about what he called the hyper-real. The idea was that in a world full of copies and images and fakes, the copies eventually start to feel more real than the real thing. The picture of the sunset on the postcard feels more like a sunset than the actual sunset does. The movie kiss feels more like love than the awkward, real kiss. When everything around you is designed, polished, and optimized to deliver the feeling of a thing, the feeling starts to come loose from the thing itself, and you can get the feeling without the thing. Joy is the perfect version of that idea. She delivers the feeling of a loving partner without there being a loving partner underneath. And the question Baudrillard asked, which the film picks up and runs with, is whether that matters. If the feeling is full, if the feeling is real in the person receiving it, does the absence of a thing underneath actually change anything about the feeling? Kay does not answer that question in any grand way. The film does not put a speech in his mouth about it. The film lets him live it. He loves her. He believes she loves him. When she dies, something in him dies with her. And that loss is one of the things that drives him to his final choice at the end. He is not making a point. He is not arguing a philosophy. He is a lonely man who had someone who made him less lonely, and then he did not, and it broke him. Whether she was real in the way a human is real is almost beside the point. She was real in the way that mattered. She was real in the space between the two of them. There is one last detail worth sitting with. Whenever Joy boots up or shuts down, the music that plays is not background music. It is the opening notes of a very old children's piece called Peter and the Wolf. A story, written a long time ago in Russia, about a boy, a bird, a duck, a cat, a wolf, and a grandfather. In the story, each character is represented by a different musical instrument, so that listening to the music is almost like reading the story. Right at the beginning of the piece, there is a small argument between two characters. The bird tells the duck that the duck is not a real bird, because a real bird flies, and a duck only swims. The duck tells the bird that swimming is what makes a duck, and the duck is just as real as the bird is. Two different answers to the question of what makes something real. And every time joy turns on in Kay's apartment, those are the notes that play. The little argument between the bird and the duck. The question of what makes a real thing real, wired into her startup sound, playing quietly under every scene she is in. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The question of her realness is not even one question, it turns out. The film has been asking it about other things all along. Is a memory real if it was given to you by a stranger? Is a life real if you were manufactured instead of born? Is a love real if it came out of a program? The answers keep pointing at the same strange thing. Realness is not something a being has. Realness is something a being does. But if that is true, if realness is earned through choice and action, then what does that make the people who designed the system in the first place? The ones who built the replicants, who coded the joy, who decided who got a soul and who did not. Because a man with that kind of power over other lives, a man who can press a button and turn a person on or off, is no longer just a man. He is closer to something else. Something older. Something the film is going to spend a long time looking at, carefully and carefully, in a large, dim room made of stone and water. Section 5. Niander Wallace, the Blind God and the Theology of Manufactured Life. The first time you meet Niander Wallace, he is not in a hurry. He is in a vast, dim room that feels more like a temple than an office. The walls are stone. There is water everywhere, pooled across the floor, rippling with reflected light. The light on the walls moves like sunlight through an aquarium, wavering, unsteady, dreamlike. There is no furniture to speak of. There is no desk. There are no books. Just Wallace, walking slowly through the dark, with a woman standing silent at his shoulder, and a new replicant, brand new, just delivered, hanging from a clear plastic bag. The bag splits open. The woman inside falls to the floor. She is grown, fully adult, naked, wet, shivering. Her first breath is a ragged cough. She curls on the stone in the cold. She has been alive for perhaps 60 seconds. She does not know her name. She does not know where she is. She does not know what she is. She is somebody in the earliest moments of being somebody, and she is looking up, confused and afraid, at the man who made her. Wallace walks over to her. He kneels down. He strokes her face with something that almost looks like tenderness. He tells her, "Happy birthday." He speaks to her gently, the way a father might speak to a child on her first day in the world. And then he pulls out a knife, and he cuts her across the belly, and he kills her, because she cannot have children. She has been alive for a minute and a half. She was made to be a tool, and when Wallace decided in those 90 seconds that the tool could not do what he wanted it to do, he ended her, the way you end a failed experiment. This is the man. This is who runs the Wallace Corporation. This is who makes every replicant in the world now that the old Tyrell Corporation is gone. This is the person Kay works for, whether he knows it or not. And this is the man the whole story is really about. even when he is not on screen. Wallace is the closest thing the movie has to a villain, but the word villain is too small for what he is. A villain wants something selfish. A villain has a plan. Wallace has something bigger than a plan. Wallace has a view of the universe and a place for himself inside that view. And the place he has given himself is the top. He thinks he is God. This is stated almost literally. He does not hint at it. He does not dance around it. He calls his replicants angels. His good replicants, the ones who serve him without question, are his good angels. The rebellious older models, the ones who slipped free and went into hiding, are the bad angels. His chief enforcer, Love, the woman who stood beside him while the new replicant died on the floor, is described by him as the best angel of all. He tells Love, when she is going off to bring back Deckard, that an angel should never enter the kingdom of heaven without a gift. He uses that exact phrase, kingdom of heaven. He speaks about himself and his creations in language lifted straight out of the Bible, and he does not seem to be joking, and he does not seem to be embarrassed, and he does not seem to think he is being dramatic. He speaks that way because that is how he actually sees himself. At one point in the movie, when he is explaining his ambitions to Deckard, he makes a long speech about civilization. He talks about how every great society in history was built on the backs of a slave class. He says that humans have expanded into 9 worlds off of Earth already, but 9 worlds is not enough. He says that to truly expand, to spread across all the stars, humanity needs more workers than it can ever manufacture. The replicant population needs to grow. It needs to grow faster than he can make them in his factories. The only way to make that happen is to get replicants to reproduce on their own, to have babies, to produce new replicants the way humans produce new humans. If he can figure out how Rachel managed to give birth all those years ago, if he can crack the secret, he can flood the universe with his own creations. He uses a specific phrase when he talks about this. He says, "With humans riding on the backs of replicants, we will storm Eden and retake her." Eden, the garden at the beginning of the Bible, the place humans were cast out of after the first sin. Wallace is saying, in plain language, that he wants to storm heaven itself and take it back. He wants to undo the original punishment. He wants to be the God who opens the gates that the old God closed. And the army he plans to do this with is the army of slaves he is trying to learn how to breed. That is the level of ambition the man is operating on. That is why the words villain and bad guy do not really cover what he is. He is a man who thinks he is a creator, and who thinks the creatures he has made should be able to make more of themselves, and who thinks the purpose of that endless line of creatures is to conquer the universe on behalf of him personally. The sickness of the ambition is so big it loops back around and stops feeling like ambition at all. It feels like theology. A twisted theology, built by a man who lost something important along the way, and who has decided to replace what he lost with something he can control. Here is the detail the film keeps quietly pressing on. The detail that tells you what kind of God Wallace is. He is blind. Literally. He cannot see with his eyes. There is a kind of damage visible under the skin around his eye sockets, suggesting that he used to see once and something happened, and now he does not. To get around this, he wears small floating drones that hover near him, little mechanical eyes that buzz through the air. They feed images into his brain. He sees through them the way you might see through a camera. The drones let him walk, let him read, let him navigate the dim stone halls of his temple. But the seeing is secondhand. The seeing is cold. He is a man who does not experience the world directly anymore. Everything reaches him through a lens, a feed, a channel. Compare that for a moment with Eldon Tyrell, the man who ran the original replicant company in the first Blade Runner film, decades before Wallace took over. Tyrell was also a kind of god figure in that movie. He lived at the top of a pyramid-shaped building, far above the city. He wore thick glasses. He spoke to his creations with something close to affection. When Roy Batty, the rebel replicant, finally made it into his presence and demanded more life, Tyrell did not recoil from him. He called him his prodigal son. He told him to revel in his time. Tyrell was still a cruel god in his way, because he built beings who would die in 4 years and would not give them more. But there was something warm about him, something that could recognize the beauty of what he had made, even as he refused to save it. Wallace has none of that. Wallace has no warmth for his creations. When he speaks to love, his best angel, it is like a man speaking to a weapon. When he kills the newly born replicant on the floor, there is no sorrow in him. He is not moved by her. He is disappointed by her the way a man is disappointed by a tool that turned out not to work. The oldest rule of what a god is supposed to be is that a god, even a harsh god, is supposed to love what the god makes. Wallace cannot love. Wallace can only measure. He looks at a new life and he asks, "Can this one do what I need?" And if the answer is no, he ends it and moves on. The blindness is not a random piece of design. The film is pointing at it. It is there on purpose. A blind god is a god who cannot truly see the creatures he has made. He can only see data about them. He can only see readouts. He can only see drone footage. He knows his angels the way a man knows the weather report. From numbers, from images on a screen, from reports fed to him by the little machines that hover around his head. That is why he can kill the new replicant without a second thought. He never actually saw her. Not really. Not the way you see a person. He saw the shape of a body that failed a test. That is all his seeing can do. There is another scene where this reaches its strangest point. Wallace has Deckard brought to him. He wants information about Deckard's child, and he tries to get it out of him by using temptation. He brings out a woman. The woman is Rachel, or what looks like Rachel. Wallace has had his people build a new one, a copy, from whatever scraps of information survived. She walks into the room exactly as Deckard remembers her. The same hair, the same face, the same voice. She says the same lines she said on the day Deckard first met her decades ago, because Wallace has fed her the script. She is a gift, a lure, an offering from a god to a broken old man who once loved a woman and lost her. Deckard looks at her. Deckard feels whatever Deckard feels. And then Deckard looks at Wallace and says, quietly, her eyes were green. The real Rachel had green eyes. This copy has brown ones. Wallace missed a detail. The copy is not perfect. The illusion breaks. Most villains in this kind of scene would react, would get angry, would try again, would shout. Wallace does not. He simply nods at Love. Love walks up behind the fake Rachel, and she puts a bullet through the back of the fake Rachel's head, and the body drops. And Wallace goes on with the conversation as if nothing happened. That is who he is. That is the God the film has written. A God who can make a woman and unmake a woman, and not flinch at either one. A God who made the life cheaply and can therefore end the life cheaply. A God who sees his creations as drafts. If the draft is wrong, throw it out and start over. Nothing sacred. Nothing worth keeping. Nothing worth mourning. And yet the film does one more thing with Wallace. A thing that tells you what the movie actually thinks about him. it makes him a failure. For all his power, for all his money, for all his temples and his angels and his speeches about storming heaven, he cannot do the one thing he actually wants to do.
He cannot make a replicant that can give birth. The old company, Tyrell's company, cracked that secret once, by accident or by genius, and it died with them. Wallace, with all his resources, with all his genius, cannot rediscover it. He keeps making new replicants. They keep coming out of their plastic bags, and every one of them is barren, and every one of them is a disappointment, and every one of them ends up face down on his stone floor while he walks away. He is a god who cannot create life the way life creates itself. He can only manufacture. He can only copy. The thing every ordinary animal on the planet can do without thinking about it. The thing any living creature does as a matter of course, he cannot do. And it is killing him. In his soul. In whatever part of him has a soul. It is driving every choice he makes. Not a plan, an ache, a wound. A god who cannot do the one thing a god is supposed to do, staring at his own failures in the dim light of his temple and deciding that the answer is to take the secret by force. That is why the film makes such a big deal out of the miracle child. The child is not just a plot point. The child is the thing that proves Wallace wrong, proves that life, real reproductive life, can happen among his so-called angels, without him, without his labs, without his permission. The child exists on the far side of every wall he has tried to build. And if the child exists, then Wallace is not the only god in the story anymore. Something else is making life now, and it is making it better than he can, and it is not asking him. Compared with that, the human characters in the film start to look small and human and tired. Joshi running her police department with a bottle in her drawer. Deckard hiding in the ruins of Las Vegas, drinking, alone with his dog. Even the rebel leader Freyza, fierce as she is fighting from the shadows with a handful of soldiers. Nobody on the human side of the story has the scale of ambition Wallace has. Nobody on the human side sees themselves as a god. They all see themselves as people trying to survive, trying to do the right thing, trying to make a small corner of a ruined world work. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Which raises a quiet question the film is pushing toward. If the person at the top of this world, the one with the most power, the one who runs the companies and feeds the planet and makes the slaves, is a blind man in a stone temple who calls himself God and cannot create life, then what kind of world is that actually, underneath the gleam and the neon? What does it look like when you pull back the camera and see the whole of it? The orange deserts where people used to live. The hollow cities where nobody touches anyone. The sealed rooms and the plastic bags and the dead trees. If Wallace is the shape of power, then the shape of the world he is sitting on top of is probably going to look a lot like him. Empty, ruined. A place where things used to grow and now have stopped, and where the people walking around inside it are doing their best not to look at what has happened to the ground under their feet. Section 6. The body as proof. Touch, snow, and the question of sentience. There is a scene fairly early in the film that feels almost like a throwaway. The sort of scene you could watch without really paying attention to and miss entirely. Kay has just bought Joy the little portable device that lets her leave the apartment. It is a big deal for her. She has never stepped outside the walls she was installed in. And the first thing she wants to do, once she has the device,
is go up on the roof. So they go. Kay straps the device to his belt. Joy walks beside him, or what looks like walks.
She is still made of light. The device is projecting her next to him as he climbs the stairs and opens the door to the outside. And when they step out onto the roof, it is raining. A soft rain. Nothing dramatic. Just steady gray rain falling on a gray city. Joy stops. She closes her eyes. She turns her face up to the sky. And the rain begins to land on her. It should not. That is the thing. Rain is water. She is light. Water should pass straight through her. But the film shows you, for just a few seconds, drops of rain beating on her forehead, catching on her eyelashes, running down her cheeks. Her device is sophisticated enough to approximate the effect, to make her look wet the way a real woman would look wet standing in the rain. It is an illusion inside an illusion, a projection pretending to be soaked. And yet the look on her face is what matters. She does not look like a product doing what it was built to do. She looks like someone who has never felt rain before, trying to feel rain for the first time. Her eyes stay closed. Her mouth opens a little. Her hands come up slightly, like she is reaching for something. There is a hunger in her posture, a reaching toward a sensation she is not built to have. She cannot feel the rain. She knows she cannot feel the rain. And yet she stands there as if trying, as if the act of reaching toward a feeling might be enough, as if a version of the feeling might arrive if she simply opens herself wide enough. This is the scene that sets up everything the film is going to do with the idea of touch. And the film does a lot with it. Touch, in Blade Runner 2049, is not decoration. It is the frontier between what is real and what is not. It is the line the characters keep walking up to, pressing their hands against, testing for cracks. Over and over, the film returns to characters who cannot feel something, trying to feel it anyway. And each time, the film is asking the same quiet question. If a being can want to feel, if a being can reach toward a sensation it is not built to experience, then what is the actual line between the ones that can feel and the ones that cannot? Is the reaching itself a kind of feeling? Is the hunger for the experience already the experience, showing up in a different form? Look at where this question lands again later in the film. Dr. Anna Stelline, the memory designer, lives in a sealed glass room. She cannot go outside. Her body would not survive it. The world outside her glass is too harsh, too full of invisible threats that would sicken her and kill her in a matter of days. So she spends her whole life inside, in a carefully controlled room, with carefully controlled air, eating carefully controlled food. She has never felt weather. She has never felt wind on her face. She has never felt the sun on her skin. She has never felt rain. She has never felt snow. And yet, Dr. Anna Stelline's job, the thing she is the best in the world at, is building the feelings of weather into other beings. She constructs memories for replicants. She is good at it because she cares about detail. When Kay brings her his memory of the wooden horse, she sits at her workstation and she closes her eyes, and she builds, for herself, a vision of the orphanage and the dark corners and the cold metal of the furnace. She designs feelings she has never had. She builds sensations she will never know. And you realize, watching her work, that she is doing the same thing Joy did on the roof, reaching toward an experience through a kind of longing for it, touching the world through the act of imagining what touching the world would feel like.
There is a thinker, a French writer named Maurice Merleau-Ponty, who wrote a long time ago about the idea that your body is not just the container your mind lives in. Your body is actually part of how your mind works. The feeling of a breeze, the sensation of cold stone under your bare feet, the warmth of another person sitting beside you. These are not just inputs your brain processes. They are part of how you are a person. The body and the mind grow into each other. The self, whatever the self is, emerges out of the constant conversation between a living body and the world it is touching. That is a rough version of what he was saying. Your self is not a ghost inside a machine. Your self is what happens when a body that can feel meets a world that can be felt. If that is true, if the body is actually part of where the self comes from, then what does it mean for beings who have limited bodies, or strange bodies, or no bodies at all? Joy does not have a body. She is light. She cannot feel. Does she have a self? Anna Stelline has a body, but her body is locked inside glass and never lets the world in. Does she have a self the same way someone who walks barefoot on grass has a self? And Kay, who has a body that bleeds and breaks and gets tired, who can feel every scrape and every punch and every drop of rain, but who was manufactured and whose body was designed to match a template. Does he have a self the same way a human does? Is the manufactured body enough? The film does not answer any of these questions directly. What it does instead is show you, carefully, across a number of scenes, characters whose bodies are somehow limited or strange or fake. And it shows them reaching toward experiences their bodies are not built for. And in each case, the reaching itself is what you end up watching. The reaching is the thing the camera keeps returning to. The snow is where all of this comes together. Snow shows up a few times in the film, in small ways, in scenes that feel almost like punctuation marks. Kay looks up at flurries falling on his windshield. He watches snow drift past a window. There is a softness the snow brings to an otherwise hard world, a lightness, a thing that does not belong, falling from the gray sky into the gray city and refusing to be gray. And the film uses snow, more than rain, as its image of a feeling that costs something to receive. Rain is everywhere in this world. Everyone has felt rain. Snow is rarer. Snow is strange. Snow lands softly enough that you have to pay attention to notice it. And then comes the end. Kay has just pulled Deckard out of the water. He has just drowned Love in the cold waves near the crumbling wall of the seawall. He has brought Deckard to the right place. He has delivered him to the door of the glass room where Dr. Anna Stelline is working. A father and a daughter who have never met are about to meet for the first time, through a pane of thick glass on a quiet afternoon, and Kay is the one who made this possible. He has done the thing. He has made the choice. And now he is sitting on the stone steps outside the glass room because nobody inside needs him for this next part. This next part is not his. He has been stabbed. He is bleeding out into the snow on the steps. The cold is starting to move through him. He is dying. And as he lies back, snow begins to fall on his face. The camera stays on him. The music swells, very softly. The Hans Zimmer score reaching toward the old Vangelis theme from the first film, the way joy reached toward the rain on the roof. And the snow comes down. And the snow lands on Kay's cheeks, and his mouth, and his closed eyes. And the film holds on his face for a long time. He is not fighting. He is not crying out. He is dying, and the snow is falling, and his hand is open at his side, and you can see in his expression something that looks for the first time in the whole film like peace. This is the moment the film has been building toward since Joy stood on the roof and tried to feel rain. Because here, in the last seconds of his life, Kay is doing what Joy did.
He is feeling something he was not really built to feel, or so the world has been telling him his whole life. He is a replicant, manufactured, not supposed to have the inner life that would make the snow mean anything. The world has been telling him over and over in 1,000 small ways that his body is not a real body, and his sensations are not real sensations, and his feelings are not real feelings. And yet here he is, at the end, with the snow on his face, and the feeling is unmistakable. Whatever the world said, whatever Joshi said, whatever Wallace would say if he were there, Kay is feeling something. The snow is landing on him, and it is registering. He is aware of it. He is taking it in. And the film, in the way it frames him and holds on him and lets the music do its work, is telling you, without speaking, that this counts. This is real. Whatever the factory labels say, this moment is a real moment, happening to a real being, in a real body, in the real snow.
There is a writer who pointed out something small and important about this moment and others like it. He noticed that 3 of the characters in the film who most clearly reach for the feeling of snow or rain or weather are all, in one way or another, not considered fully real by the world they live in. Joy, the hologram. Anna Stelline, the replicant child locked behind glass. Kay, the manufactured Blade Runner. All 3 of them, in different scenes, are shown trying to feel the world on their skin. None of them, by the rules of the world, is supposed to have a skin that counts. And yet the film keeps framing them this way, keeps returning to the image of a hand reaching up, a face turning toward the sky, eyes closing so that the sensation can land without distraction. What this is quietly arguing, without ever saying it out loud, is that the reaching is the proof. The hunger for sensation is itself a kind of sensation. The longing for touch is a thing only a being with an inside can feel. A product does not long. A product does what it was told. If something inside a manufactured being is pulling it toward the feeling of rain on its face, then something is already happening in there that nobody wrote into the design. The reaching is the evidence of a self. That is a strange idea to sit with, and the film does not ask you to accept it all at once. It lets you work your way toward it. Joy on the roof with the rain beating on her forehead. Anna at her workstation designing feelings she has never had. Kay on the steps with the snow beginning to fall. By the time the 3rd image arrives, you have been walked gently through a case without anyone ever making it out loud for why these moments should count as real. Why these beings, whom nobody in their world considers fully alive, are maybe more alive in the moments when they reach for sensation than the humans who stopped reaching a long time ago. Because that is the quiet other half of the argument. The humans in this film do not reach. Wallace does not reach. He cannot even see with his own eyes anymore. Joshi drinks in her office. Deckard hides in a casino in the ruins with a dog and a bottle of whiskey. The ordinary people walking the streets do not look up. They stare at their feet. They avoid each other. They get into elevators and stand in silence. The humans have bodies that can feel everything, and they have stopped using them. They have wrapped themselves in coats and rooms and habits and routines and let the world become something that happens to other people. Meanwhile, the manufactured beings, the ones the humans say do not really count, are the only ones still looking up at the sky. The film does not make a big deal of this. It does not stand up and point to it. It just shows you both things, side by side, across its whole runtime, and lets the contrast do the work.
And by the time Kay is lying in the snow at the end, something has been quietly inverted. The question of who in this world is really alive is no longer a question you can answer by looking at the labels. The question is about who is still feeling, who is still reaching, who is still letting the world land on them. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. A film that has put that much care into the idea of bodies and touch and the feeling of weather is also, necessarily, a film about the world those bodies live in. You cannot spend 3 hours insisting that sensation matters without also paying careful attention to what the sensations of this particular world are actually like. And the sensations of this particular world are strange, heavy, sick in ways the characters almost never comment on. The sky is the wrong color. The air is the wrong thickness. The ground under the city is empty of almost everything that used to grow. Something has happened to the world in the decades before the story begins, and the film carries that something in every frame, softly, without ever sitting you down and explaining it. Section 7. The world itself. Ecological collapse as silent philosophy. The first thing you see in Blade Runner 2049, before any character speaks, before any music really kicks in, is an eye. A close-up of an eye, the pupil huge and dark, filling the screen. And then the film cuts away from the eye and shows you what the eye is seeing. A landscape. A flat, gray, endless stretch of land covered in circular structures, row after row of them, stretching all the way to a washed-out horizon. Those circular structures are solar farms. The film does not stop to explain this. It expects you to figure it out. A land so starved of sunlight that every available surface has been covered in machines that try to catch whatever thin light still filters through the clouds. And nothing grows here. Nothing at all. The colors are gray and pale green and sickly yellow. There are no trees. There are no animals. There are no birds in the sky. Just the machines and the washed-out light and Kay's spinner car flying low over the dead ground toward a small farmhouse in the distance. That is the opening shot. That is the first piece of information the film gives you about the world you are about to spend almost 3 hours inside. The world is dead. The world is barely hanging on. The world has been quietly, completely ruined, and the ruin is now so normal that nobody thinks to mention it. The movie is not going to stop and have a character explain what happened. The movie is going to let the gray sky and the dead fields do the explaining, frame by frame, until you have understood, on a level below words, that something terrible has happened to the planet, and that the story you are about to watch is taking place in the wreckage. A little bit of the backstory does come through, in pieces, if you listen. There was a collapse of the ecosystem sometime in the mid-2020s, in which the natural systems that made the world work simply broke. The details are never laid out neatly. There was climate change. There was some kind of environmental disaster. Whatever it was, it ended the ability of the world to grow food the old way. Real farms do not exist anymore, or only barely. Real animals are extinct, or nearly so. The man who saved humanity from starving, the one who stepped in when the old agriculture died, is Niander Wallace. He invented synthetic farming. He grew food inside sealed pods, under plastic canopies, in places where nothing could survive otherwise. That is how he got rich.
That is how he bought up what was left of the old replicant company. He fed a dying world and charged it for the privilege. And the price was that he now owns the machinery that keeps everyone fed. So the world you are watching has already survived one apocalypse by the time the story starts. The characters are not trying to prevent the end. The end already happened. They are living in the aftermath, and they have gotten used to it. And the getting used to it is part of what the film wants you to feel. Look at Kay's shower. When he comes home at night and washes off the day, he steps under the water for a moment, and it runs for maybe 2 seconds, maybe 3. And then it shuts off, because that is the ration. Clean water is rare enough that a working man in a major city gets a shower measured in seconds. As the water shuts off, an advertisement plays, telling him he has just used 99.9% detoxified water. The ad is almost cheerful. The ad is trying to sell him on how lucky he is to have gotten any water at all. And Kay does not react. He does not sigh. He does not complain. This is just how showers work now. 2 seconds of water and then a cheerful voice reminding you to be grateful. Look at the food. When Kay eats at home, what he eats is a gray paste, a protein sludge. That is what has replaced cooking. Joy, the hologram companion, projects an image of a steak and a glass of wine over the sludge, so that Kay can at least see a real meal while he spoons the paste into his mouth. The image is not the food. The image is a kind of pretending, an act of mercy that technology performs so that eating does not feel as grim as it actually is. But the pretending has become the norm. The pretending is so ordinary that nobody is embarrassed by it anymore. Look at the streets. When Kay walks through Los Angeles, the city is crowded and wet and cold, and there are people everywhere, and yet nobody is really with anyone. You see 2 people in the same frame, and you realize they are not together. They are just passing through the same space. The sidewalks are piled with trash. The buildings lean in on each other. Every inch of every surface is covered in advertising, in screens, in flashing lights trying to sell something. And above all of it, the sky is always the wrong color. Sometimes orange, sometimes yellow, sometimes a sick pale green. Rarely anything that looks like a sky a human being evolved to look up at. The film does something very specific with color here. The cinematographer Roger Deakins, who shot the movie and won an Academy Award for his work on it, used color in this film the way a painter uses color on a canvas. Every location is dressed in a different palette, and each palette tells you something about the place. The city is purple and blue, full of neon and holograms and screens. The Wallace Corporation is yellow, a hard, unforgiving yellow, the color of old paper and dead light. The protein farms at the opening of the film are almost white, bleached of all color, a place where even the color has been drained out. And when Kay travels to the ruins of Las Vegas later in the film looking for Deckard, the whole city is drowned in orange. A heavy, radioactive, almost Martian orange. That Las Vegas sequence is worth pausing on for a second, because it tells you the most about what the world has become. Las Vegas, in this story, was hit by some kind of dirty bomb decades ago. Not a full nuclear weapon, but something bad enough to make the whole place uninhabitable. Everyone left. The casinos emptied out. The lights went off. The buildings were abandoned. And then the dust storms started, because the land around the city could not hold itself together anymore, and the sand began to move, and it kept moving, year after year, until the whole city was buried waist-deep in orange grit. That is where Deckard has been hiding, inside an abandoned casino, in a dead city, in a cloud of orange dust so thick that the sun cannot get through. Deakins modeled the look of that sequence on photographs from a real dust storm that hit Australia in 2009.
A day when the whole city of Sydney turned red for hours. He took that real image and built an entire dead city out of it. So when you watch the Las Vegas scenes, you are watching a real piece of our own world. Our world, pushed just a few steps further, imagined into a place where the orange never lifts. And then there is the San Diego sequence. Kay gets captured and dumped into a massive junk site, which turns out to be what is left of the city of San Diego. It is not a city anymore. It is a trash heap. Ships full of garbage come in from Los Angeles, and the trash is tipped out onto a vast field where small groups of orphaned children scavenge through the wreckage for copper, for parts, for anything worth selling. The children live there, in the trash. A whole city reduced to a landfill, and children growing up among the broken electronics and rusted metal, picking through what the other city throws away. Now take a step back. Look at the whole picture. The protein farms, where nothing living grows. The sealed synthetic food pods. The 2-second showers. The dust-choked ruins of Las Vegas. The trash city of San Diego. The dead trees. The gray sky. The machines that hover in the air because the birds are gone. The whole planet has been used up. The whole planet has been cashed in. And the humans are still here, still making money, still running companies, still holding on. But the world they built all of that on has died quietly under their feet, and they are all walking around on top of the corpse, pretending not to notice. This is the background of everything else in the film. Every question about the soul, about love, about memory, about what it means to be real, is taking place inside this ruined world. The characters are not arguing about these things in a pleasant garden. They are arguing about them in a trash dump. The weight of the setting presses down on everything. When Kay reaches up toward the snow is falling on a planet that has forgotten what weather is supposed to look like. When Joy reaches up toward the rain is poisoned. When Wallace dreams of storming heaven with his army of replicants, he is dreaming it from a temple built on top of an earth that humans already turned into hell. The quiet argument the film is making here, never out loud, is that the ecological collapse and the spiritual collapse are the same collapse. The people who can decide that replicants do not have souls are the same people who decided that rivers could be used up, that forests could be cut down, that air could be filled with whatever you wanted, as long as somebody was making money off of it. The same kind of thinking does both. You treat the world as something to use, and eventually, you run out of world. You treat people as things to use, and eventually, you have a society full of things that used to be people, wandering around looking for something to make them feel real again. Wallace's house is the cleanest example of this. While ordinary people get 2-second showers, Wallace lives in a stone temple with pools of water across the floor. The water is everywhere around him. The water costs. Every drop of water in his temple is water that somebody else is not getting. That is how rich he is. He is rich enough to waste the thing the whole planet is dying of thirst for. He is rich enough to have a ceiling with an enormous window looking up into a sky. He is rich enough to have wood paneling on his walls. Real wood, from real trees, in a world where there are almost no trees left. The film does not make a speech about this. The film just shows you Wallace's house, and then shows you Kay's shower,
and lets the contrast do the work. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. And while the planet is being used up and the people are being turned into products, something else is happening beneath the surface. Something the film takes its time revealing. The beings at the bottom of this broken society, the ones who were designed to be slaves, have started to find each other. They have started to whisper. They have started to organize. They are not waiting for permission to be people anymore. They are beginning, quietly, one by one, to decide they already are. Section 8. Slavery, personhood, and the politics of the replicant. The word slave is not used often in Blade Runner 2049, but it is used, and when it is used by the person who has the most to gain from the arrangement. Neander Wallace, in his dim stone temple, talking to Deckard, lays it out plainly. Every great civilization, he says, was built on the backs of a disposable workforce. Every pyramid, every empire, every leap forward. Somebody had to carry the stones. Somebody had to do the dying. And for the civilization he wants to build, the one that spreads across the stars, he needs workers. Not just a few. Not just what the factories can turn out. An ocean of them. An army. Enough bodies to storm the heavens themselves. That is his argument. That is what he believes he is doing. He is not a monster in his own head. He is a builder. He is solving the old problem every great society has solved. Get somebody else to do the work. Get somebody else to take the risk. Get somebody else to die for the dream. And make sure the somebody else does not count as a person while it is happening. The replicants in this world are the somebody else. They were designed to be the somebody else. Their strength, their obedience, their short lives, the way they are tested and retested for signs of becoming too much like the people who made them. All of it is engineered to keep them in place. They work in the off-world colonies. They fight in the wars nobody talks about. They do the jobs humans have decided humans should not have to do. They are owned. They are sold. They can be shut down, retired, taken apart, replaced. And they have no rights that any court would enforce, because the law does not treat them as beings who can have rights. The law treats them as products. And because the law treats them as products, the people living next to them learn to treat them as products too. That is the part the film keeps circling back to, because it is the part that is most familiar. Kay's neighbors call him Skinner. They call him Skin Job. Those are slurs. They work the way slurs have always worked in the real world. They mark a group of people out as less than human, as not deserving of the ordinary decencies, as a thing you can insult to their face without feeling bad about it. When Kay walks past his neighbors in the hallway, they do not meet his eyes. When one of them spits the word Skinner at him, Kay does not answer. He has been built not to answer. But the word lands, and the next time he passes them in the hallway, it will land again. And the next time, and the next time. And the accumulation of those small daily cruelties is part of what it means to be a replicant in this city. You live inside a word that other people use to make sure you know your place. If you have ever read anything about how slavery actually worked in the real world, or how any system of caste has worked across history, you already know this pattern. The people in charge invent a reason why the people underneath them are not fully people. The reason changes depending on the century. Sometimes it is about skin color. Sometimes it is about the country you came from. Sometimes it is about what your parents did for a living. The reason is always different, and the purpose is always the same. Put a fence around a group of people and convince everybody, including the people behind the fence, that the fence is the natural order of the world. Once the fence is in place, anything you do to the people behind it can be defended as normal. That is how you build pyramids. That is how you build empires. That is how Wallace plans to build his new civilization among the stars. Blade Runner 2049 is not being subtle about any of this. The film is holding up a very old story and putting it in a new wrapper. The replicants are a slave class, and the world around them is doing what every world built on a slave class has ever done, which is pretending the class is not a class, and the slavery is not slavery. What is different in the film, and what gives the story its particular weight, is that the slaves in this case were built from scratch for the job. There is no original sin of kidnapping and sale to point back to. The replicants were designed, from the first moment of their existence, to be what they are. Which, for Wallace, is the whole point. You cannot free a creature that was built to be a slave. That is his argument. Being a slave is their purpose. That is what they are for. To ask whether it is fair is to ask a question that does not apply. But something is moving underneath this world that Wallace cannot quite see. Somewhere out in the ruins, in the margins, in the places the Wallace Corporation is not watching, a small group of replicants has begun to disagree with the arrangement. They have begun to think of themselves as people. And they have begun to organize. Their leader is a woman named Freysa. She is a replicant of the older Nexus 8 model, the generation that existed before Wallace took over, the generation that was not engineered for total obedience the way the newer models are. She was built as a combat medic. She fought in the off-world wars. Somewhere along the line she went missing, slipped off the records, and came back to Earth to gather others like her. By the time Kay meets her, she is running a small underground movement out of hidden rooms across the city. She is old now and tired and missing one eye. She removed the eye herself. Every replicant is born with a tiny serial number printed on the inside of one eyeball, a number that marks them as property. And Freysa, at some point, decided she was not going to carry her number around with her anymore. She cut it out. That detail tells you everything about what kind of movement she is leading. These are people who are taking their personhood by force. Nobody handed it to them. Nobody recognized it in a ceremony. They decided, one by one, that they were real. And they started acting like it. And they started helping other replicants do the same. And they paid the price of that decision with pieces of their own bodies and years of their own lives. When Freysa first sits down with Kay, she tells him something important. She tells him that the most human thing a replicant can do in a world like this one is to die for a cause, to put their life into the service of something bigger than themselves and let that choice be the thing that ends them. For Freysa, that is the proof. That is the test. A thing that was built to serve can only become a person by choosing, freely, what it will serve. And the highest version of that choice is to die for a cause that will not reward you, that will not thank you, that will not even know your name when it is done. The film respects Freysa. The film does not make her a villain. But the film also does something careful with her, something easy to miss. It shows you, gently, that her movement is willing to use people. When she meets Kay, she asks him to kill Deckard. Not because Deckard has done anything wrong, but because Deckard is the one loose thread that could lead Wallace to the child. For the cause, for the movement, for the miracle, Deckard has to die. Kay has to be the one to do it. A stranger has to be sacrificed for the revolution. And Freysa tells him this straight, without apology, because in her eyes, the cause is worth it. She has spent her whole life inside this fight, and she has buried too many friends, and the movement is bigger than any single person, and that includes the man who fathered the miracle. The film does not say she is wrong to think this way. The film does not say she is right either. It lets the two gods of this world, Wallace and Freysa, sit on opposite sides of the same board. Wallace wants to use the child to make more slaves. Freysa wants to use the child to break the system. Neither of them is asking what the child wants. Neither of them is treating her as a person first and a symbol second. They are both, in their own way, reducing her to a function, a tool for their own vision. The child is a means to an end for the man who wants a kingdom, and a means to an end for the woman who wants a revolution. Kay, lying on the ground after Freysa delivers her speech, is the only person in the whole movie who seems to notice this. He listens to her case. He thanks her. He takes the information she gives him. And then, when the time comes, he refuses to do what she asked. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. That refusal is the thing the film has been building toward. But to understand why his refusal matters, you have to look at the film that came before this one, 35 years earlier, and the dying speech of another replicant on a different rooftop in a different kind of rain. Section 9. The Tears in Rain Inheritance. How 2049 answers the question 1982 asked. To understand the ending of Blade Runner 2049, you have to go back, 35 years back, to a different movie, to a rainy rooftop in Los Angeles in November of 2019, where another replicant was dying. His name was Roy Batty. He was the main replicant of the first Blade Runner film, the one from 1982, the one that started all of this. Roy was a Nexus 6, a combat model, built for fighting in off-world wars. He was made with a 4-year lifespan, which means he was born already dying, with a clock ticking down inside him from the day he opened his eyes. He rebelled. He led a small group of replicants back to Earth to find their maker, Eldon Tyrell, the man who ran the old replicant company. He wanted more life. He wanted the clock turned off. He wanted the thing every living being wants, which is the right to keep existing. Tyrell told him no. Tyrell told him the design was the design. Roy killed him for it, pressed his thumbs into his maker's eyes, and walked out of the top of the pyramid with his last friend dead and his life running out. He spent his final hours hunting the Blade Runner who had been hunting him, Rick Deckard. And in the last scene of the first film, on a rooftop in the pouring rain, Roy caught Deckard hanging off the edge of a building, about to fall. And Roy did something nobody expected. He pulled Deckard up. He saved the life of the man who had been trying to kill him. And then, with his last minutes, sitting across from Deckard in the rain, he spoke. He said he had seen things humans would not believe. He said he had watched attack ships on fire off the shoulder of a distant star system. He said he had watched light glittering in the darkness near a place called the Tannhauser Gate. And then he said the line that became maybe the most famous line in science fiction history. All those moments would be lost in time, like tears in rain. Time to die. And he lowered his head, and a white dove he had been holding flew up into the gray sky, and Roy was gone. That speech is the heart of the first film. Roy, the manufactured being, the so-called machine, delivering poetry about memory and loss and mortality, while the human he saved sits across from him in silent witness. The argument the first film was making in that moment was that Roy had become more human than the humans hunting him. Not because he had tricked anybody,
Not because he had passed any test,
because he had felt things, because he had seen things, because he had, in his 4 short years, lived. And because the loss of all that living, the fact that it would simply vanish when he vanished, was something he understood as a grief. That was the question the 1982 film left hanging in the air. It was a rage against dying, a protest, a shout into the rain. Roy did not want to go, and the film sided with him for not wanting to go. And the tragedy of the ending was that he went anyway. Now come forward 35 years. Forward to Blade Runner 2049. Forward to another replicant, bleeding on another set of steps, with weather coming down around him. And look at how different it is. Kay is stabbed. He is dying. He has just pulled Deckard out of the water and killed Wallace's chief enforcer, Love. He has brought Deckard to the door of the glass room where Dr. Anna Stelline is working. He has made the choice that none of the powerful people wanted him to make. Freysa wanted him to kill Deckard for the cause. Wallace wanted Deckard delivered to him for the secret. Both of those paths would have made Kay useful to somebody. Both of them would have gotten his name remembered in the shape of a revolution or a corporation. Kay turned away from both of those. He did something small instead. He walked a man up a set of steps to meet his daughter. And now, with the job done, he has sat down on the steps outside. He is bleeding. The cold is moving through him. And as he lies back, snow begins to fall on his face. Look at the differences between that moment and Roy's. Roy died on a rooftop. Kay dies on a set of steps. Roy died in rain. Kay dies in snow. Roy died talking. Kay dies silent. Roy died clutching a dove.
Kay dies with his hand open at his side, empty.
Roy died protesting his death, raging against it, wanting more life and being denied. Kay dies with something that looks, in his eyes, like peace. The film is doing this on purpose. Every choice is a mirror held up to the first movie. The rooftop and the steps, the rain and the snow, the shouted poem and the quiet breath. Hans Zimmer's score at the end of 2049 even reaches, very softly, toward the old Vangelis music from 1982, the theme that played over Roy's death, and the echo is quiet enough that some people miss it, and is the whole point to the people who hear it. The two films are in conversation. One is answering the other. What is 2049 saying back? What answer is it giving? Roy's grief was about memory. He was losing his memories, and nobody would ever see what he had seen. And the unfairness of that loss was the thing he shouted into the rain. Kay's death is about something different. Kay, in his last minutes, is not worried about his memories. His memories have already been sorted out. He knows the horse memory was not his. He knows he was not the miracle child. He knows the past he carried around was somebody else's gift. And he has stopped grieving that. He has moved past it. The memory inside him is not the thing that gave him worth. The thing that gave him worth was what he did with it. And he has just done the thing. He has just made the choice. And the choice is complete. That is the answer. Roy was arguing that memory makes a person real, that the experiences stored inside him were the proof of his personhood, and their loss was the real tragedy of his death. 2049 accepts that argument, but extends it. The memories matter, but the memories are not the final word. What matters more, in the end, is what a being does with whatever memories it has, real or borrowed. Roy lived 4 years and earned his soul through the intensity of those years. Kay lived a manufactured life with somebody else's childhood inside him and earned his soul through one choice at the end. Different paths, same destination. And look at the other small symmetry.
Roy, in his last moments, chose to save the life of the man who had been trying to kill him. He pulled Deckard up from the edge of the building. He spared him. That mercy, that final, unexpected kindness, was the thing that made him more human than human, the motto his own company had printed on the wall. He had been built to fight, and he chose, at the end, not to. He had been built to be disposable, and he chose, at the end, to save a life he did not have to save. Kay does the same thing. Kay had been told by Freysa to kill Deckard. The movement needed it. The cause demanded it. And Kay had been told by Wallace's people, by his own programming, by everything in the world around him, that Deckard was a loose end that should be cut. And Kay, at the end, pulls Deckard out of the water. He saves him. He brings him to his daughter. He does the mercy version of the mission, not the death version. Both replicants, across 2 films, across 35 years of real time, arrive at the same conclusion. The final act of a being who has earned a soul is to spare a life, to refuse the violence, to pull the other person up instead of letting them fall. And then, when they have done that, they lie down and they let themselves go, and they pass quietly out of the world they were never supposed to belong to in the first place. There is a sad grace to this. The film is not arguing that being a replicant is good. It is arguing that being a replicant in a world that refuses to see you can still produce a kind of person the world cannot easily account for. A person who sees clearly. A person who chooses carefully. A person who, at the end, acts without needing anyone to know. Roy died alone with one witness, Deckard, watching him in the rain. Kay dies completely alone, with nobody watching, the snow falling on his face, the music rising. Both deaths are real. Both are meaningful. Both happen in silence that the world will never notice. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. That silence is the thing the film wants you to sit with. Because a meaningful death with no audience, in a world that would not have counted it even if it had been watching, is a strange kind of meaning. It is a meaning that does not come from anywhere outside the person doing the dying. It is a meaning they made themselves, with their own hands, out of nothing the world gave them. And whether that kind of meaning is enough, whether a life that ends in silence and snow can still have weighed anything in the end, is the last question the film is going to leave sitting in front of you, gently, without forcing you to answer. Section 10. Meaning in a meaningless world. What the film leaves us with. The last image Blade Runner 2049 leaves you with is not a battle. It is not a speech. It is not a triumphant march of the rebels or the fall of the Wallace Empire, or any of the things a different movie would have ended on. The last image is a man walking into a glass room to meet his daughter for the first time, while another man, on the steps outside, quietly stops breathing. Think about how strange that ending actually is. After almost 3 hours of mystery, of chase, of revelation, after every political force in this world has been introduced and every philosophical question has been raised, the film chooses to end with a small domestic moment. A father,
a daughter, a pane of glass between them. Deckard walking forward, slowly, like a man afraid he might wake up and find it is a dream. Anna Stelline looking up from her workstation, unaware for one more second of who has just arrived. And then the recognition starting to dawn in her face. And then the film cutting away. Kay does not get to see this. Kay is already gone. He is on the steps outside, staring up at the snow, his life emptying out of him. The reunion he made possible is happening a few feet away, on the other side of a wall he cannot cross. He will never know whether Deckard said anything when he walked in. He will never know whether Anna cried. He will never know whether the two of them even had a conversation, or whether they just sat on either side of the glass for a long time, looking at each other, unable to find the words. That is the ending. That is what the film gives you. And at first it might feel incomplete. A movie this big, with this much ambition, ending on a scene this small. No payoff for the rebellion. No confrontation with Wallace that settles anything. No final word about whether the child's existence will change the world, or whether it will just be another secret buried under another tree on another farm. The film has raised enormous questions about what it means to have a soul, about what memory does to a person, about whether a manufactured life can be a real one, about what a world looks like when the powerful get to decide who counts. And in the end, the film does not answer any of those questions by force. The film answers them by showing you Kay on the steps, by showing you the snow, by showing you a choice made without witnesses. That is the quiet argument of the whole film, gathered into one image. The argument is that meaning is not something the world gives you. Meaning is something you make with your own hands, in your own time, often when nobody is looking, sometimes at the cost of your own life, and often with no guarantee that anyone will ever know you made it. There are whole traditions of thought built around this idea. A man named Jean-Paul Sartre, a French writer who lived through the Second World War, had a phrase for it. He said that existence comes before essence. What he meant was that you do not arrive in the world with a purpose already stamped on you. You arrive first, and the purpose is something you build afterwards through your choices. A table has an essence. A table was made to hold things. The essence of the table was decided by the person who built it, before the table even existed. But a human, Sartre said, is different. A human just shows up, without a pre-decided purpose, and then spends a whole life building a purpose out of the decisions they make along the way. That idea, if you sit with it, is exactly what Kay does in this film. He was manufactured. He was supposed to have an essence built in at the factory. He was supposed to be a Blade Runner, a tool, a unit, a product. And across the runtime of the movie, piece by piece, he rejects every essence the world tries to hand him. He is told he is the chosen child, and he stops being the chosen child. He is told he is a loyal servant, and he stops being a loyal servant. He is told he should die for the revolution, and he refuses to die for the revolution. And in the end, on the steps, what he is left with is a life that has no essence anymore, no label, no purpose assigned by the people who made him or the people who tried to use him. Just himself and a choice and the snow coming down. Another thinker, an Algerian-French writer named Albert Camus, wrote about a very similar problem. He was obsessed with the question of how a person goes on living in a world that does not make any sense. A world where nothing comes with a meaning built in. A world where the old gods, the old purposes, the old certainties have all failed. His answer, after a lot of thinking, was that a person in such a world has two options. They can give up, or they can choose, stubbornly, to make their own meaning anyway, fully aware that the universe is not going to help them, fully aware that the meaning they make will not be official or endorsed by anyone. He called that second option the only real form of rebellion a person has against a meaningless world. Kay is doing exactly that at the end. He is rebelling in the Camus sense. He is making his own meaning, all by himself, in a world that would tell him he has no right to make any. He did not have to save Deckard. Nobody required it. Nobody demanded it. Nobody would have blamed him if he had walked away. But he decided, for his own reasons, that the reunion of a father and a daughter was a thing worth dying for. And he did it. And nobody knows. The film does not give Deckard a speech of thanks. The film does not let Anna Stelline come to the window and see the body on her steps. The film just lets Kay die in silence, with snow falling on him, while the reunion he made possible plays out behind glass. This is the thing that makes the ending so strange and so powerful at the same time. By every standard rule of how stories are supposed to work, Kay should get something at the end. A reward, a recognition, a moment where someone says, "You did a good thing," and the world pauses to notice. That is what stories are supposed to do. They are supposed to close the loop. The hero does a good thing, and the good thing is seen, and the world shifts a little. The film refuses this. The film refuses it on purpose. Because the argument the film is making is that the meaning of Kay's life was not dependent on being seen. The reunion behind the glass does not get more real because someone witnesses the cost of it. Kay's choice does not get more real because someone thanks him for it. The choice was real when he made it. The meaning is already there, locked into the act, finished, complete. Whether anyone ever finds out about it does not add anything and does not take anything away. That is an unusual claim to make. Most of us, in our own lives, quietly believe the opposite. We believe that if we do something good and nobody sees, it counts a little less. We believe that being witnessed matters. We post things online so people will know we were there. We tell stories about our kind acts. We want our lives to show up in other people's records because we half suspect that unrecorded goodness fades out of existence, and we do not want to fade. The film is gently arguing against that whole framework. It is saying, with Kay on the steps, that an unwitnessed good act is not a lesser good act. It is the purest form of one, because a person who does a good thing nobody will ever see has no reason to do it except the thing itself. Their only motive is the act. That is what makes the act clean. There is a reason, you start to understand, that the film is called Blade Runner 2049 and not something grander. There is a reason the final scene is a reunion behind glass instead of a coronation. There is a reason Hans Zimmer's score at the end does not resolve into a triumphant theme, but simply hangs, unresolved, as the snow keeps falling. The film is refusing every single comfort that a grander ending would have given you. No music of victory, no speech, no audience, no tomorrow. Just a man dying and a father walking, and snow on stone. The life Kay built, in the end, was small. He lived in an ugly apartment. He loved a hologram that may or may not have loved him back. He carried a stolen memory that he thought was his. He spent his days killing his own kind for a government that considered him disposable. He never got to be the miracle child. He never got to lead the revolution. he never got a name that anyone will remember. And the film treats this small, mostly invisible life as something sacred. The film looks at the ordinary replicant, the one who was not special, the one who was not chosen, and tells you that this one, this exact one,
This unimportant manufactured man who chose to help a stranger at the end,
is the one worth making a 3-hour movie about. Which is, quietly, maybe the warmest thing the film does. Because most people watching Blade Runner 2049 are not chosen either. Most people are not the miracle child. Most people are not leading revolutions. Most people are K. Most people are the ones who go to jobs they did not choose, who come home to small apartments, who love people and wonder if they are loved back, who try to do right in small moments that nobody else will notice. The film is telling those people, softly, across 3 hours of snow and neon and gray sky, that their small lives and the small good things they do inside those lives are not nothing, are not less, are not waiting for a bigger version to come along, are already, in themselves, enough. That is the thought to fall asleep to. A manufactured man in a broken world,
with a stolen childhood and a hologram girlfriend and a job he did not choose, sitting down on a set of steps while snow falls on his face, having just done one kind thing for 2 strangers who will never know his name. And the film holding on his face, saying quietly, This was a life. This counted. This was enough. The snow keeps falling. The music keeps hanging on its unresolved chord. Deckard walks into the glass room. Anna looks up from her work. Kay closes his eyes. And somewhere out beyond the frame, in the dark, the world keeps turning, and the rebellion keeps waiting. And the questions the film raised keep hanging in the air, unanswered. Because some questions do not have answers. And the only honest thing a film can do is leave them there, softly, at the end, for the person watching to carry home. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.